Hello, my name is Adam Moskowitz, and I love cheese. And I love cheesemongers almost as much as I love cheese. So today I'm going to talk about what does it mean to be a cheesemonger. First, a little bit about myself. I own and operate Larkin Cold Storage, which is a cheese warehouse. Also Columbia Cheese, which is a cheese importer where I source, market, and sell cheese. I started the Cheesemonger Invitational, which is a cheesemonger competition, and I created the Barnyard Collective, which is a cheesemonger community. And although I've got a bunch of stuff that I do, the reality is I work for one thing, and that's cheese. We all work for cheese. So who am I really? Really, I'm a turophile. I love cheese more than anything else in life. Why? Because it's a perfect food. You could eat it for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack. It is welcome at every meal. And who are we really? Well, let me tell you a little secret. Now that you're a cheesemonger, you're going to show up at parties and people are going to corner you to talk about cheese. Because if you're a cheesemonger, then you're a cheese leader, and everybody wants to learn about cheeses. So, if it's your first day or last day as a cheesemonger, then you're an expert. That's it. The cheese consumer doesn't know how many days you've been on the job. So from day one to day forever, you're a caretaker, matchmaker, tastemaker, terroir tour guide, food fear therapist, sensory Svengali. It's really important that you understand this. If you're behind that counter, you're an expert. So I decided to Google monger to learn what the great Google thinks it is. And what I've discovered is that mongers are traders of a specific commodity, but more importantly, they're also people that foster a certain feeling, mood, or situation. And I think it's really important to key in on that because I think what it really means to be a cheesemonger is fostering meaningful connections. That's what we do. We connect people through cheese to man, animal, land, tradition, terroir, and history. So, I ask you a simple question. What kind of monger are you? Are you the smart type? Are you a doctor type? Are you shy? Are you hungover? Are you depressed? Are you a superhero? It's really important for you to think about what type of monger you want to be because you're really important. Let's take a look at the supply chain. From maker to monger, there's the producer, the exporter, the importer, the distributor, and the monger, and then the mouth. So you're the last stop before the mouth. I could argue that's the most important link in the chain. A cheese has worked so hard to get in that case. It represents family, tradition, terroir, sometimes entire villages. And by being the last moment before the mouth, you determine the consumer's relationship with cheese. And we never get a second chance to make a first impression. If a monger does a bad job, the cheese suffers. How you care, merchandise, and sample matters. You determine if the cheese succeeds. So let's talk about success. The truth is, I've never met a cheese I didn't like. Our first food memory is basically cheese. So I like to think about cheese eating like school. We start off at like preschool and kindergarten, eating Kraft singles and string cheese. And then we move up in the grades. We learn about mozzarella. Then we learn about cheddar and parm. Then we learn about brie and Gruyere. Then we learn about goat cheese and sheep's cheese and blue cheese. And that's what we do. As cheesemongers, we teach consumers how to upgrade. So let's take a closer look at cheese. First, we heat milk sour it by adding bacterial cultures to convert milk sugar, lactose, to lactic acid, add an enzyme such as rennet to help coagulate the fermenting milk. Once the milk is set into a gel-like substance, we use long blades to cut the curd into pieces and release the whey, drain, salt, and pack curds into molds. There's endless variations, including the choice to start with goat's, sheep's, or cow's milk, the selection of added bacterial cultures, the timing and temperature of the steps of the cheese-making process, whether a cheese is eaten fresh or aged for months or even years, resulting in hundreds, if not thousands, of varieties of cheese. I got this simple explanation from Heather Paxson. And the reason why I bring it up is because this is as simple as we could get. Or is it? The reality is we don't have to overcome a cheese consumer with the facts of cheese. Some consumers simply need to know something super simple, like Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet eating her curds and whey. That's all they really need to know. To go deeper, there's actually 8 steps to cheese making. And we can, as a cheesemonger, get really deep into the cheese making process. But for the consumer, we don't really need to bore them or even confuse them with what pH is really all about. We simply need to know that there's 8 steps to cheese making, and in fact, a couple less if it's a lactic set. So here's a good question. How many ingredients are in cheese? The answer is only 4. We got milk, we got cultures, we got rennet, and we got salt. That's it, 4 ingredients. So let's talk about cheese classifications. There's 3 types of classifications: industrial, artisanal, and farmstead. Industrial is big agribusiness, lots of milk, big vats, robots, very little hand-to-hand contact with the cheese. Then we have artisanal, where the cheese maker and the dairy farmer have a really close relationship. They talk, they interact, they work together. It's often a village dairy style. Lastly, there's farmstead, possibly the hardest job in the cheese business. This is when the person that's actually milking the cows also makes the cheese. And as a cheesemonger, I think our goal is to bring the consumers of industrial cheese over to the land of artisanal cheese and farmstead cheese. So when did we start eating cheese? I looked up foodtimeline.org and discovered that first there was water and ice, then salt. Then we started eating oysters, scallops, mussels, fish venison, and greens. Then flour, bread, soup, almonds, cherries. Then wine and beer, which is really interesting. Wine and beer used to be the safe thing to drink. Then pig, goat, sheep, cow domestication. Then, once we domesticated these animals, we started making cheese. Then pickles, then chocolate, then coffee, then Red Bull, and then lab meat. And here's my point. I don't know about you, but I basically eat salad, soup, cured meat, cheese, pickles, coffee. That's my diet. And that diet has been around for thousands of years. It's only in the last 50 to 100 years that we've gotten completely disconnected from our food and are starting to eat things like chicken nuggets and energy drinks and whatnot. This is not the type of meaningful connections we really need to be fostering with our food. So let's look at when we got disconnected from our food. I decided to look up the Industrial Revolution. I think this played a part. And what I discovered is that 1784 was a great year. We developed tools that help us maximize our production. But then in 1870 was the division of labor, electricity, and mass production. It was basically the year man got disconnected from the land and started migrating to the big cities. In 1969 is when things like the internet and automation was born. And this was the year that man got disconnected from himself. This was when basically our digital avatar became more important than our organic self. And what's scary to think about is where are we going? What's the future? And I'm afraid the future is cyber-physical systems, which sounds like Skynet from Terminator, and that's terrifying. And so, I think our job as a cheesemonger is to help people get deeply connected with food. And the way to do that, the way to really get people excited, is to entertain them. Let's see ourselves as performers. The cheese counter's the stage, and that the cheeses are characters, and the cheesemonger are actors. We breathe life into the character of cheese, and the rest of our shop, from bread to fruits and nuts to meat, this is our supporting cast. So let's put on a show. The question I ask you is, what type of actor do you want to be? Do you want to be a good actor, or do you want to be a bad actor? I want to be a good actor. Speaking of actors, I discovered that a man only learns in two ways. One by reading, and the other by association with smarter people. And you cheesemongers, when it comes to cheese, are the smarter people. I also learned from a famous actor, this guy Will Rogers, that even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. Meaning, never stop learning. Never. Lastly, I discovered if you find the right job, you'll never have to work a day in your life. This guy Will Rogers is blowing my mind. And that's the joys of cheese. Who would have thought that because of cheese, I'm discovering all about Will Rogers? So I dove deeper. Will said, people's minds are changed through observation, not through argument. So that means if somebody calls it Manchango, don't just correct them. Give them a piece and get them excited. They learn from observation. Will said, never miss a good chance to shut up. Yeah. If a customer wants that cheese, give them that cheese. You don't have to talk. It's not about you. It's about them and the cheese and that relationship. Will said, you'll never get a second chance to make a first impression. Aha! Will knows his stuff. And in fact, Will's the type of actor that will literally jump through lassos to make the customer happy. And that's what we do. Because Will Rogers did a lot of things. He was a humorist, he was a cowboy, he was a performer, he was a columnist, and lastly, he also flew his own plane, which is how he died. But more importantly, if we look at these photos of my man Will Rogers, what do we notice? He wears a lot of hats, just like us. Some of the hats we wear are receiver, surgeon, caretaker, merchandiser, educator, salesperson, mind reader, performer. That's what it takes to be a great cheesemonger. That's what it requires to make meaningful connections. And when we're making these meaningful connections, what we're doing is not just connecting people to cheese. We're connecting people to craft, like agriculture, cheesemaking, and affinage. We're connecting people to community, like the farmer, the dairy, the cooperative. We're introducing cheese lovers to the commerce of fair prices for craft, for sustainable communities, and for the global village. We live in a global village, and eating cheese brings us back to a time that makes us infinitely happy. And that's what being a cheesemonger really means. I love you, cheesemongers. Keep up the good fight. Perform like you've never performed before. We love cheese together.